I think If Friday's Child is a reasonably enjoyable episode, though not quite a notable classic, and it isn't the weakest episode to feature Klingons. That would be Season 3's Elan of Troyes. Although it feels less at a certainly Errand of Mercy, but also Tribbles, and the slightly similar regarding how the Klingons are applied, Private Little War. Day of the Dove is another Klingon episode, a Season 3 entry, which I would cite as the superior to Friday's Child. I have read that legendary writer for the show, D.C. Fontana, one of the seminal women in science fiction, had desired to realise a script featuring a woman character who did not anticipate having a child, and aside from the inclusion of Klingons, apparently her script was rather unchanged and accepted by the superiors on the program. I think the direction lets this episode down to some extent. The visuals are not entirely compelling, but also the action is all relegated to one not tremendously alien planet. There aren't many Klingons on display anyway. Obviously, they were shoehorned in after the storyline had been devised, and I don't think the cast are at their most memorable or convicted here either. But it is enjoyable when watching it. Any Klingon episode is intrinsically likable in some respect, or that is the general assumption. However, I am concerned that, while certainly a rather ambitious project on its own, where DC Fontana's screenwriting is concerned, I believe that the execution of this narrative might have been inevitably dull. Maybe if Fontana had been more hands-on the production themselves, not that they would allow a show's writer ever to do so then, it might have had more of a pronounced visual character, guided by the initial author. But who is to say? I am partly wondering whether the idea had much legs as an episode. Perhaps Fontana sought to string together a typical, slightly cheap Trek episode with some themes that she liked in it, caring about her paycheck, what her bosses want, and what she can insert to elevate otherwise unmemorable material otherwise. And her unique additions entail the most interesting facets of this script, excluding the apparently cynical inclusion of the Klingons. I like to think that Fontana's entirely original screenplay, Star Trek or otherwise, exploring her preferred ideas, would have worked better, for her sake, and for a viewer presumably, if it didn't have to fit in with a slightly dull, some of the time, 60s Trek 40-minute, 50-minute don't cost too much money formula. Interestingly, black and white promo photos of Shatner and guest star Julie Newmar portraying Aline are a common sight on web pages seeking to romantically espouse the history of the 60s show. Newmar is magnetically arresting in these images.